Hello and welcome, everybody. It is the Sunday night live stream from the Veg Army podcast. As you know, my name is Richard. It is the 10th of March 2024. I hope you're all well. Hope you've had a great week. Weather. Didn't the sun came out yesterday? It was absolutely glorious. I was actually out yesterday. I visited Hyde Hall and RHS Garden, and it was just such lovely weather. I'm so glad I made the trip out. But that's beyond the point. We're going to be talking about chicken keeping today, something that I've done for many, many years now. And it's something that I think will make quite a bit of discussion because I know a few of you are also interested in keeping chickens. But before that, first of all, let's find out who we've got in the chat. Adrian is there saying hello to all. Idaho Garden Girl is there saying hello, Richard and everyone. And then she says, hit the thumbs up, and she must be early. She was a little early. I did see that. Buddy Silly and Allotment Man is just home. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to you. What else have we got? Digwell is there. He's coming out with his foreign language again. I have no idea what he's... Oh, no, he says, good evening. How are we all in Turkish? He's certainly trying to add some culture to the show, isn't he? Idaho says, or maybe the US had a time change and I didn't know about it. We certainly didn't. I know we certainly didn't. Anna Jones is joining us, saying evening, gardeners. Good evening to you. Robert Brownsford has joined us. Good evening, all. I'm usually a lurker as I don't have a garden, only a few recycling bins with rhubarb in them. Well, we're happy to have you along, and please do join in the conversation. Idaho says, I just looked up and we did have a time change, 2 a.m. in the morning for us. We sprang forward. Indeed. We're at the end of this month that we spring forward. So that spring forward, we lose an hour's sleep, isn't it? It's a little annoying. Anna Jones says it's chicken week. Indeed it is. And Kate says, good evening, Veg Army. Good evening to you. Scott has joined us, and good evening, everyone. Good evening to you. Stuart Jackson, evening, Richard and the Veg Army. I hope you are all well. We raised another £105 this week for the Brain Tumour Charity at our plant sale. Fantastic, fantastic. £105 is absolutely brilliant, I have to say. What else have we got? Who else have we got? Anna Jane's giving Stu Jackson a round of applause. Indeed, it's fantastic, isn't it? Hargrave Gas has joined us. Evening, everyone. I hope you had a great weekend driving, so we'll be listening rather than commenting. Love keeping chickens. We've only got one currently, down from 6. Bloody foxes, indeed, indeed. One of those things we are going to be talking about. Now, Kate says, I'm really looking forward to getting chicks. Once we get into a new house and settled, I want to adopt expatriate hands to give them the best life possible. Indeed, indeed. Turbo Stream is there saying, good evening, Veg Podcasters. Ian McCorgan, however you pronounce it. Hello, Veg Growers Army. Good evening to you. What else have we got? Turbo Stream says, don't mention the weather. Rained here all day today. The allotment was starting to dry out too. Indeed. David Williams has joined, saying hello all. Good evening to you. Turbo Stream says, I know nothing about keeping chickens, so I'll sit back with a cup of tea and work out where to plant stuff on my allotment. Well, let's see if we can try and persuade you into keeping chickens. So, where do I start? I think the best thing where to start is I started keeping chickens 9 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. Shortly after I first moved into this house, it was always something I've wanted to do for a long time, just because it goes so well with vegetable gardening. Lovely idea of keeping chickens, being able to get some of those fresh eggs. So it was 8 years ago. I got myself a second-hand coop, and I built a run onto it, and then I got a couple of chickens. Bear is still alive that we've got to this day. There we go, and I haven't looked back. We absolutely love having chickens. We've changed the things that we do. We've changed coops and stuff like that, but we absolutely love having chickens. And there's a lot of positives and negatives about keeping chickens, which I'm hoping to go through tonight. Now, if you are thinking of getting chickens, of course, where is the first thing that you need? I'm going to say the first thing that you need is, of course, the coop. The chicken coop is where chickens go at night, where they sleep. It gives them somewhere safe, somewhere secure to go and sleep and retire and stay safe. Now, most chicken coops on the inside, they will have rails along where the chicken will stand overnight and be perfectly safe. That's how they sleep, almost like branches on a tree. Most chicken coops, or the traditional chicken coop, is made of wood. You will often have a run attached to it as well, and they're up off the ground. However, I started off with a wooden one, and I've still got it. I'm trying to get rid of it, but I think I'm going to have to smash it up and burn it because it's just taking up space. Oh, there's some flicker there. But what we're going to be doing instead, what I've done instead, sorry, is I've got a chicken coop made by a company called Omelette, and it is the best thing I've ever got for chickens. I started off with a small one. I've now expanded up into a bigger one that's up off the ground. They're made of plastic. The trouble with wood is is very difficult to try and keep clean. It has a lot of grooves and things like that. And it was difficult to keep it clean. And then you get these little spider mites, which really itch the chicken. So plastic was much better because you can just hose it off and it doesn't give anywhere for the mites to live. So I do prefer plastic, but wood, I will say, wood looks better. Let's have a look in the comments before we carry on. Where were we? My dad has joined, saying good evening. Good evening to you. We've got somebody in the Facebook group saying, I thought it was much earlier. Still got my gloves on. What is it? Yeah, it does seem a little bit weird, doesn't it, at the moment? Chickens are so nice because they mostly keep themselves. Yeah, they are really easy to look after. They are, unlike a dog where you have to make sure you're home after so many hours to let it out and weed. Chickens will look after themselves. I think they need at least once or twice a day a checkup, but on a whole, they will look after themselves. So I'll get into that in just a moment, funny enough. Ian Beddoes says, nearest I got to chickens is KFC. Excellent. Kate says, first question I have about the chicken manure. Can you use it straight or does it need to leave rotting down? So the chicken manure, yes, chickens do, of course, produce manure, but it is a hot manure, so it does need rotting down. Most of the time, they do poop a bit during the day, but most of the time it is at night when they're in their coop. So most of it is collected in there. And once a week, I just clean out my coop and I put all the wood shavings. They poop onto the wood shavings. The wood shavings and the old straw goes into my compost bin and it just breaks down. It's a really good source of nitrogen and it produces quite a decent amount of compost for that very reason. That's one of the advantages of having chickens is you do get chicken manure, but it is a hot manure. Wood shavings, of course, I just add that into the bottom of the coop just to give it something to dry things out and what have you. And straw as well works quite well. Good evening. Apologies for being late, says somebody in the Facebook group. Oh, it was Amanda, and she's added it with the there. And evening all. I don't have room for chickens at home at the moment, but definitely will have some when we have a bigger garden. Looking forward to hearing everyone's insights this evening. Not sure, is that Rebecca in the group? I'm not sure who that is, but whoever, if you are in the group, I know it doesn't come up with your name, but yeah, the size of a garden is a big factor. I mean, you can have them in small gardens, but you won't have much room for anything else. To be fair to the chickens, I would say you need about 1 meter square space for each chicken. And that does fall into the free range element as well. You could let them have free roam around your garden, of course. For me, I prefer my chickens to be in a run, but it's a big run. And excuse me, we do let them free range in the garden from time to time, but we have to be around. The thing that stops us, we did let them free range all the time when Amanda was working from home. And then during the middle of the day, a fox got into our garden and caught one of them. And Amanda ran out there with a mop to scare the fox off. A few weeks later, unfortunately, the chicken did die. So foxes are the main reason we don't necessarily let our chickens free range away from their coop. Our garden is fairly secure, but the run itself that we have is large enough to actually call it free range as well. I don't call it free range because it doesn't strike it quite right for me. But when we have let free range in the garden, they get plenty of space. It just needs to be very secure. Kate says, is wood or plastic better? In question about the coop, I would say plastic from my experience, and say omelette, igloo is what I've got. They are a lot of money though. They are expensive. You can get cheaper coops, or you can make your own out of wood. But the advantage is the plastic are easier to clean and what have you. Rob's Allotment Gardens joined again. Good evening, all. Hope you are all doing okay. Lovely to see you. Hope you are well too. Nicola has got her gloves on. That was it. Stuart says, when I had my chickens, I had a wooden house. You just have to have a routine for cleaning, as wood does attract mites. So clean, then clean again. Yes, this is a part of the thing. What I find with chickens, I've got the daily routine and the weekly routine and every so often routine. So daily routine is I go out in the morning, I make sure they got food and water, and I open up the poop hole, which is the door to the coop, and let the chickens out for the day. You can actually automate that. You can get electronic openers that do it automatically for you, but that just makes it easy. And then at night, I check on them as well during the day. But then at night, they take themselves off to bed when it gets dark and just close up the poop hole and bring in their food. Now their food, and the food and water is usually plastic containers. The ones I recommend are what called treadles for the food, and they actually have where the chicken has to stand on this sort of lever on the platform to open up the food. Just means you're less likely to get rats. Rats, unfortunately, is one of the negatives about keeping chickens, is that they can attract rats. So you have to bear that in mind if you are thinking of getting chickens. But you can stop from having rats by not leaving food or water out all the time, overnight particularly, and controlling things. We'll get into that in a little bit later. The weekly routine, what I like to do once a week is, as I say, clean out the coop. So I go in there, give it a quick brush around, empty the tray of all the wood chips and the manure and the straw. That goes straight in the compost bin. And then I add fresh wood shavings and fresh straw. And there we go. And then every few months, maybe 3 months, I'll give it a deep clean with a pressure washer, just to make sure we don't get anything left behind. One thing I would add, in the summer months, because spider mites are a bit of a problem, it is worth just getting this sort of powder that you dust around the coop. Just throw that around when you're cleaning it out as well. Chicken manure is very strong. Yeah, it is very strong, but it does rot down, like I say. Sorry, the comment about the bigger garden was me. It got jumbled, says Amanda. That's all right. Recommended now 2 meter per bird. Yeah, 2 meters squared per bird or something like that. It's not as big an area as you would expect with chickens. This is why I don't necessarily call my birds free range, but they do have a pretty big amount of space and they do get plenty of room to do their own thing. Idaho with me says, I agree that plastic is easier to clean. Yeah, it's so much easier. It is so much easier because wood, you get these little grooves and you get these little indentations and stuff like that that make it very difficult to keep the coop clean. But we get there. We get there in the end. Rob's Allotment Garden says, little peckers are a good supplier. Is that for the food? I go to a local farm supplier for our food. I get layers pellets, buy it in 20 kilo bags. Price was really high a couple of years ago. I can't remember what it was. It's about £12 for a 20 kilo bag now. That 20 kilo bag will last me a couple of months. I pour it into some plastic boxes that I keep indoors. But yeah, a local farm supplier is nice and easy to get hold of them, usually pretty cheap as well, and they're more than happy to serve you. Water just straight from the tap or rainwater. Sometimes I add a bit of cider apple vinegar just to help the chicken's digestion to the water every now and then. And it just helps keep them in good health. The only other thing they need from time, corn, just to add a bit of fun and excitement to them. They love corn, especially if it's cold. It actually warms their bodies up. So handful of corn every now and then, not too much because they can overgorge on it. But grit as well, a little pot of grit just so, because how chickens eat, when they swallow the food and they grind it up in their gullet, and they need the grit in there to grind up their food. So a bit of grit just goes a long way to help it out. Nicholas says, I use horse rapeseed bedding, breaks down quicker. Yeah, I mean, I just grab straw or anything like that. There's so many different things you can use, but horse rapeseed, straw, anything like that does well. Anna Jones says, do you have to clip their wings to stop them flying? This is actually a very good question. Now, in my 8 years of keeping chickens, I've never clipped any of our chickens' wings. There is something you're meant to do. You're only meant to clip one wing, because chickens, although you don't think of chickens flying, they can fly. They're not very good flyers, but they can fly. And if you clipped both their wings, they will be able to get enough lift. But if you clip one of their wings, it'll just, if they try and fly, it causes them to fly sideways and back down into the ground. So you only clip one of their wings. It's not something I've ever done, and it's not something I've ever felt the need to do. Our chickens have never got, our fences are sort of 6 foot plus, so they've never felt the need to get up that high. But if your fences are lower, you may have to clip the wings to stop it from happening. Plenty of videos on YouTube to help you with that. Ian says, don't forget to like. Indeed. Idaho says, chicken manure is hot. Maybe it is overkill, but I let my chickens manure rest for a year before I put it on the garden, because I can't see it can burn the plants. Yeah, I put mine in the compost bin and I let it do the work in there. It's great for really heating up your compost, I have to say. Stuart Jackson says, I use bark for the run, then every few weeks I would dig it out and replace, but put the waste for the compost bin. They mix it up so well so it doesn't get too strong in the bin. Yeah, I've been looking at this. Again, I'm on the clay soil, so our run, I've got over the top of my run, I've actually got these tarpaulin things which help keep the rain out and keep it dry. But our clay soil can get very claggy. So I've been looking at sand on the run or bark chips just to try and help them out a bit. And I've used bark or shredded trees in the past, which work great. I've got to say, they really do work great. But they did become a bit peaty, a bit boggy. So every few weeks, you do have to clear it out, more compost material at the end of the day, and replace. Just don't think about it. It's all about trying to give the chickens the best home possible. You don't have to do that. They can get away with it, but I just think if you've got very boggy soil like I do tend to have, it can be a bit of a problem. Idaho says, I don't clip wings. Chickens can't fight off predators, but they can fly to get away. Yes, that is the point. Is yeah. I've sort of got the same feeling. Clipping chickens' wings, people do, especially farmers, if they've only got the low fencing, electric fencing to keep them off. But yeah, that does happen. They do have a tendency to fly off their predators. I do miss the extra compost since having them. It's fantastic stuff, the compost you get from it. Rob's Allotment Garden says, world record flight for a chicken is just over 13 seconds. They're really not good flyers at all. And Digger says, I've had corn-fed chickens, but not grit-fed. As I said, all chickens, when they're digging in the ground, they're actually looking to swallow a bit of grit because they need it in their gullet to grind up all the corn that they are eating. That's sort of what they're doing quite often when they are hunting for grit. And one of the things chickens tend to do, this is one of the negatives or positives, they tend to scratch at the ground looking for worms, looking for insects and bits of grit as well. They're great for pest control in that regard, but if you have planted some plants out, they do have a tendency to try and scratch at them and dig them. What I found is that if I planted out some tomatoes, I would actually make like cut the bottom off a pot, sink that into the ground and then plant into that, and the chickens didn't scratch at it, so it didn't dislodge any of my new plants. But the chickens scratching at the soil is something they do tend to do quite often. Digwell says, sat here imagining a chicken flying around in circles. Yeah, it is amazing. If you ever do see a chicken fly, we don't think of them as being flying birds, but they actually are flying birds. Rob says they also need grit for their shells as well. Yeah, calcium. That's often why if chickens start to eat their own eggs and they eat the shells, it's often because they want the calcium in order to produce decent shells. So there's a wide range of reasons. It's not hard to do. Oyster shell is something else I sometimes add to their feed just to add that bit of grit to their stuff. But again, most of the time they find this stuff out for themselves in their own garden and what have you. Stuart says, a top tip, if you have to clip the chicken's wings, don't let the vet do it. It's about £25 per bird, and also it's very easy to do. I've never done it, as I said. I've never felt the need, and I've never liked to do it. But I have seen videos. It does seem quite easy to do as well. It's the same with clipping the chicken's feet nails as well. I've never had to do that, but when they're scratching at the ground, they're kind of automatically doing it for themselves as well. This is where I think it's important to try and replicate their natural environment as much as possible. If anybody's got any questions or anything they want to ask about keeping chickens, let us know in the comments and we will answer it. I can see there's a few of us that have got chickens who are chiming in as well. But I know some of you are looking at getting chickens, and I think that is what we're going to do. So, if you are looking at getting chickens, what breeds should you go for? And there's hundreds and hundreds of different types of breed. I've dabbled with quite a few different ones. I've got a gold line, which is Bear. She's very, very long lived. She's your typical farmyard chicken, great in the garden. She loves coming up and saying hello. We've got Gertie, who's an Amber Star, great layer. And then we've got Equinox, who's one of the new chickens we got last week. She's a Marin, a speckled Marin, beautiful looking bird. And then we've got the Leghorn, which, if you haven't heard, I'm running a competition to name the Leghorn chicken, a pure white bird. If you can come up with a name, email me, and you could be in with a chance to win tickets to Gardener's World Spring Fair on the Sunday at Bewley. Details on that or on the veggroundpodcast.co.uk. What I was getting at is there's so many different varieties that when I first kept chickens, I wanted to find varieties that were suitable for keeping in the garden and were quiet so they didn't upset the neighbours. They're pretty quiet birds, to be fair, but that's sort of what I've stuck to. And I found that as long as they're happy, they do tend to be pretty quiet. But I spent a long time researching all the different breeds. I'm not going to go into all the different breeds because there's just so many. But the ones I really like are the Amber Star and the Leghorns, because I think they are great for anybody who might be interested in keeping chickens. Digger says, I know about grit. I used to keep canaries and foreign birds, won a few shows. There you go. There you go. It just goes to show all birds need this bit of grit. It's a completely natural. Rob says Rhode Island Red was a very popular at one time. Yeah, there seems to be a sort of chickens seem to come and go in the breeds anyway with the fashions and things like that. But again, I just say do your research and find what chicken is suitable for you. Some are a bit more social than others. Some will come and lay with you and sit with you more than others. Do your research. Scott says, do you need to move where the chickens are kept from time to time? I've seen a form of farming where they move the coop to improve the land. So what you're talking about is a chicken tractor. When I first planned to keep chickens, I did plan on getting a chicken tractor. That was the chicken coop and run would be moved. I would part of your almost like my rotation. So I'd have them on one bed one year, the next year they would go on to another. That was my plan. The trouble I found with that is chicken coops can be quite heavy. I needed somebody to help me move it. Some of them do have wheels, including the Egloo ones, but you're restricted on the size of the run. So there are options of moving them around, but if you do have them in one place, they will deplete the nutrients out of the soil, and there's a good chance it may take a while, if you ever get rid of the chickens, for that soil to recover. It's not a huge problem, but it's something to think about. But chicken tracking would be what I would like to do, but we just don't have the ability to do that. One of our, or somebody that I know, they would actually use a quad bike to move the chickens along, the chicken coop in this chicken tractor thing, which I think is a great idea. Just don't have the space to really do it. I would love to. I would love to do that. Stuart says, if you keep an eye on social media, you can get ex-battery hens. Yes, they are a year or two old, but they will lay for another 5 or 6 years. So battery hens, I think somebody mentioned that they were going to get battery hens. Again, when I first was looking into it, it was recommended not to get battery hens for the first timer because they've lost a lot of feathers. They don't look great. They may even struggle with walking if they were ex-batteries. That being said, I don't think we really have battery chickens anymore. I could be wrong, but I think they are so unsellable, and most supermarkets won't sell battery chicken eggs. So I think battery hens are pretty much non-existent now. But farmers will probably only keep their chickens for 2 years. After 2 years, the first 2 years, chickens will lay an egg pretty much every day. You get lots and lots of chickens. But after that 2 years, they may not lay as many eggs, and then you're spending more money on food than what you're getting out for them. Personally, as I said, my bear is 8 years old. She hasn't laid egg for quite a few years. Normally, if she does lay an egg, it's probably in the springtime. Gertie is a couple of years old now. So she's stopped laying egg because she's gone through a molt. Chickens, once a year, they will lose all their feathers to bring on new feathers, and that's what's called a molt. But during that time, they don't have it to be able to produce new eggs. So, yeah, if you are looking at getting battery hens, again, just be prepared that they're not going to be in a great state. But Nicola does say battery chickens are illegal now. I thought they were, but rescue hens, I think, is the word we're looking for. Kate says, I'm going to name my chickens after Star Wars: Princess Leia, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Chewbacca. Princess Leia was one of the names that's been suggested, funny enough, for our chicken in the competition. So great names. Digwell says it has to be Foghorn Leghorn. It's funny enough. Foghorn Leghorn, obviously the cartoon character, male version, but that is exactly what we're talking about when I talk about our one that is the white chicken. But he also goes on to say Clucky Skywalker. Sorry. It's great, isn't it? Have to be careful with electric fences. Foxes jump them. Foxes are, of course, a problem, like rats. Foxes can be a problem. They are attracted to chickens. It's their natural instinct. Foxes can, of course, climb and jump over 6 foot. So you do have to take extra care when it comes to the foxes. What you do about it, I mean, for me, a secure garden, secure run is what we've done. And if we're out in the garden, we will keep an eye on out and free ranging. We will stay out there with the chickens as well. Before we got Roxy, it wasn't too difficult to let them free range. Now we've got Roxy, because she will attack a chicken as well, my dog. We have to be careful with that as well, which is another reason we keep them in a run. It's that balancing act between what's fair and what's safe, isn't it? Nicholas says, I have mixed breed chickens as having 5 cockerels. And yeah, I mean, cockerels are something I've never had, purely because I'm in an urban area. We've got neighbours. I think a cockerel crowing at 5 o'clock in the morning is not fair on our neighbours. If you want cockerel, I mean, you don't need a cockerel for egg laying. The only reason you would want a cockerel is if you want to breed the chickens. So maybe you're going down the meat route or you're going down the breeding route. Up to you what you do on that. Personally, it's not something I would do. Digwell says, my mate's coop was torn apart by a badger and it killed 2 hens. Again, this is why this is why a secure coop is a must, absolute must. Nicholas says, but they have closed farms. They need to allow a nest box of size of space per bird. It's all very complicated, I know, barn raised and things like that. Rob says, we used to buy point of lay hens, then start having them for dinner after 2 years. You're a braver person than me. I could not do that to any of my birds. I'm too soft like that. My birds are pets. I have to treat them like pets. I couldn't dream of eating them, which is wrong, but it's the way I feel. Scott says, I used to buy in pullet eggs from young chickens. They were quite expensive, but lovely. Again, when you're buying in eggs and you graze your own, you realise just how easy they are. But the feed cost alone is what could cause them. Idaho says, I'm a softie. I keep my hens until I pass on. I'm exactly the same. Yes, that means I'm feeding some hens that are not laying as much, but they give me so many eggs and they continue to till the ground, eat bugs and weeds. Absolutely. This is actually the pros and cons. So the pros are, of course, you get eggs from your chickens. They till the ground. They scratch the ground. They're great for pest control. They're great for compost. They're great for manure. The negative side of that, they do cost in feed. It's not a huge amount of money, though, I don't think. The said bag, 20 kilos bag, about £12. But the other negative is they can attract rats. And I rat last week, which Roxy dispatched, as I've said. Now, this is always going to be a bit of a problem and something to think about. I hate poisons, so do not use poisons. But if you want to stop rats ever coming into your garden, I personally don't have a problem with rats. But what I've got to remember is that my neighbours might see them. They might then complain to the council, and I have to get rid of my chickens. So it's, again, that balancing act of what you can do. All I do, I keep trying, make sure I do not leave food out overnight because that will attract rats. I bring it in every night and the water, and that way they're not going to get any food source. If I do see rats, then we try and let Roxy do her magic. That's the only way I think we can come around it. The other thing I've seen is you can get these electric rat bait boxes. I think these are the better way. Basically, you put a bit of bait in there, a rat will go in there and get electrocuted. This is not pleasant, I know. It's that balancing act between what you do with rats and keeping your chickens. But they will go in there, they will get zapped, and then you can dispose of them. The good thing with those is that they won't kill any of the other wildlife, your hedgehogs or squirrels or things, because they're too small for those animals to get in. That's probably the safest way to go about it. Poisons are just a no-no these days, aren't they? Nicholas says, I'm now doing totally wide ones for when I'm away from the garden. Yeah, it runs I just think that that's the way forward with chickens. I meant to say barn hens. Most hen farmers will change the flock about every 18 months, so they just need a bit of TLC. Yeah. I mean, they're not as bad as they used to. Sometimes you just see these chickens, they didn't know how to walk because they were so confined to battery farms. Battery farms being banned is just a blessing. Nicholas says, my girls have 0.2 of an acre when they are out when I am. It's plenty of space, isn't it? Plenty of space. Andrew says, my lovely neighbours have chickens and they kindly gave me a box of 12 eggs this morning. Home produced, organically grown, nothing better. And they are some of the tastiest, most delicious eggs you have ever eaten when you grow your own. The colour of the eggs alone tells you all you need to know about chickens. Added to that, they are fresh. Often the eggs when we buy from supermarket, they've been on the shelf or they're about 30 days old. These are so fresh sometimes. If you boil them for like boiled eggs, the shell is actually stuck to the eggs. You have to give them a few days on the sideboard before before you cook them, so that the shell actually peels away easily. That's how fresh they are. Rob says we had over 500 eggs and about 20 cocks. God, that was a lot of chickens then. 20 kilos in Cornwall is just under a £10 bird feed. Yeah, not that expensive, really, depending on how many birds you have and things. Yeah, well, Rob, that's a big operation indeed. Adrian says, I do the same with sheep. I keep them till they pass on naturally. It's good to hear, Adrian. Um, I think that's the way forward, isn't it? I mean, I love animals. I'm not a vegan or anything. I've got no problem with vegans, but I'm not a vegan. But I do think, when they're pets or things like that, we don't need to kill them off unnecessarily. Nicholas says, I've got the electric rat traps, but not used one yet. I think they are probably the best way, as cool as it sounds. Scott says, I would like to produce chickens for meat, but ultimately I think I would end up seeing them as pets, or my kids would do like the idea of producing my own meat. So you may recall that I used to keep quail, and one of the things that we were actually breeding the quail, one of the things that I wanted to do with the quail was actually be able to produce quail, or breed quail so that we could rear our own meat birds. But I just couldn't do it. I could not do it. I couldn't kill, which is wrong as a meat eater, but I couldn't kill anything and eat it afterwards. So I couldn't do it. Quail, if you haven't got the space for chickens, quail are a great option. You can't let them free range because they will not survive in the wild and they can fly. But quail are a great option. You get these beautiful quail eggs, much smaller than hen eggs, of course, but the birds are smaller. They are a great option if you can't have chickens. Some people have kept like quails in large hamster cages just to show how much space they need. The only reason we got rid of quail in the end is we had so many eggs we weren't eating them with the chicken eggs. So I would like to do quail again in some ways, but not here. Rob says, many years ago when I was young, I used to go to a small holding. We had pigs and chickens. Fantastic. Idaho says, yes, French eggs from hens on pasture or garden are tasty. The yolk is so rich. It's just that beautiful yellow colour, isn't it? Nicholas says, also can use cheap milk powder or drinking chocolate mixed with bicarb undercover rats eat and then expand the stomach so explode. I always worry if hedgehogs or something else is going to eat that as well. So I don't know on that, but it's an option. I'll put it like that. Where do we go? Hadrian says my father used to be able to pull chicken eggs, but I cannot do it. I can't do it either, at all. Grave Veg UK says, just to chime in, avians have completely different digestive systems to mammals. They have a crop for storing food they eat and a gizzard for grinding their grains. Absolutely, yeah. This is what we were saying earlier. So it was a flicker again. Did anybody else see a flicker, or was it just me? But yeah, completely different digestive systems. They don't have teeth, but it's also they don't react to things like chilies, capsaicin, and things like that, like we do too. So it's very different, of course. Thank you, etc., etc. Now, I'm not the only person that keeps chickens, and Bethan, unfortunately, she's not here tonight, but she did send us a video of her chicken setup. I think this is a good point to throw that in there.
Hello everyone, as part of Richard's chicken topic this week, I thought I'd show you what my chickens are like. So let's go and have a look. Here's the coop where I keep the chickens. This is an igloo coop, an omelette sort of surround that we bought last year. And we also bought some accessories to go with it, so they got a little swing and a little stand for them to do like jumping up on, so theory they don't get bored when they're in here. I've been giving them some worms just now, that's why they're feverishly pecking away at the ground. And in here they've got their feed, so they can just step on that treadle and it opens up the feed, although the feed at the moment is opened up anyway, because they get mud on this platform bit, which weighs the platform bit down and leaves the food open. But that's fine, we haven't got issue with rats at the moment, so that's okay. Then I open this hatch and check daily for eggs. And I have actually checked today, but we've got another one. So that's 2 eggs today, which is a novelty because at the moment they're not laying very much. And then, thank you chickies, thank you very much. And then over here is their water silo, which at this time of year I tend to fill once a week, and they seem to be happy enough with that. So they're more or less sort of self-sufficient in regards to the waters. They can access their own water and they can access their own food. So when we go away in the summer and we need to ask our neighbours to look after the chickens, they tend to only really need to come across maybe once or twice when we're away, just to make sure the food is okay. But they usually come and check every day, to be fair, because you wouldn't you, if you were looking after someone else's chickens. But let me show you the best reason, apart from the eggs, as to why I keep my chickens. This is one of the main reasons I keep my chickens. So here are my compost heaps there, and this is the chicken compost, which I've put in here because when I've scooped it up off the bottom of the chicken pen, there can sometimes be big stones. I mean, these are little stones, but sometimes there's quite big stones. So I wanted to keep them separate from the usual compost heap, just so that I could sieve it easier. Although I have started to put chicken poo in here as well now. So those are our chickens. They're really easy to look after. They're a bit like cats. You just need to make sure they've got food and water once a day, or in this case, you know, they're set up for to go for 4 days or so in a row, depending on the weather. And they're simple enough to look after. Occasionally I'll let them roam around the garden when I've got my crops covered and stuff, and they do enjoy a little roam around, but they will dig up everything, so so just bear that in mind. But yes, that's my chickens, and hopefully you've enjoyed seeing what my chicken coop is like. Thanks very much for watching.
Well, there we go. Thank you very much for that, Beth. And yeah, so that was Bethan's setup, and I've got to admit, I've got the same chicken coop and the run, although not as tall a run as what Bethan has, and they are, for me, my favourite, the omelette, just because of how easy they are to look after and stuff. I did see a comment where Rob's allotment, foxes can get underneath that. Now, I'm going from what Omelette says. They actually have a skirt that comes out along the ground, which prevents foxes from digging. I'm sure if a fox wanted it enough, they probably could still get in there. But it has been designed with that in mind. It's just a case of again, keeping an eye on what goes on. But that's what I have. They aren't cheap, but I think they are worth it, in my opinion, because they look good in the garden as well, in my opinion. What else? Andrew says, following on from Scott, it's never good to see farm animals as pets. I filmed many customers here in my village, even the slaughter of the family pig. It was quite upsetting. But we need to know where our food comes from. You are quite right. You're quite right. And I've always said, as a meat eater, I've always known where my food comes from. I've always seen it, and it's something that I can tolerate. But I've been unable to do it myself. So is that right? I don't know. But I think if we were 100 years ago, we wouldn't have turned a blind eye to it. It would have just been completely normal. Adrian says, I have an electric poultry plucker, but it's only used for pheasants, mainly roadkill, but not used much now. What's that for? Oh, interesting. I haven't had pheasant. I haven't had pheasant for quite a while. Stuart says, I love keeping chickens until it's time to say goodbye. Sometimes you have to give them a little help, which I found really hard. I'm sure. As I've said, I've never had to do that. So we'll see what happens. Idaho says, great tour of a chicken coop and run. Absolutely. And Grow Veg UK says, I've kept a flock for just over a decade. Couldn't live without them. They're part of our family. We just lost one of our silkies who was 10 years old. So my understanding, I've never kept silkies myself, and I don't think it's right because of our clay soil. Silkies have like these feathery boots on their feet sort of thing. I think that's the way to describe them. They're just a bit of a different look, but chickens do last for a long time. As Grow Veg says, 10 years old. My bear is 8 years old. They can last for a long time. So they are a commitment as a pet, but that's pets for you, isn't it? Idaho says, once you buy a plastic coop, you don't have to worry about it disintegrating. Being plastic, it will last forever. In theory, yeah. I mean, I guess some plastics can get UV where they might go brittle and things like that. I believe the omelette ones that I've worked with, they are designed not to do that, but I've not had it long enough to test it. I mean, ours are quite old thinking about it, and they've not gone brittle because I've got two of them. I've got two of the plastic runs, plastic chicken coops, but that's a whole other story I'll get into another day. Andrew says, thanks for that. It's hard to part with animals one has nurtured and fed for half a year to dispatch them, but then if we didn't, there wouldn't be any animals on farms. Completely right, completely right. Nicholas says, I have two as the same omelette cube houses marked by second hand. Yeah. It's well worth looking around and see what you can get. We had a JCB dig a 6-foot trench all around the coop, then put 2 foot of concrete there in, then buried the fence down into it. That's one way of stopping the foxes. Foxes dig and foxes climb and jump, so you've got to be really, really secure to stop them getting through. Adrian says, I'm a meat eater, but modern slaughtery houses I do not like. Yeah, it's not pleasant, isn't it, when we get onto this subject? But it's something. You know, if you are going to be keeping chickens or quail for meat eating, it's something to think about what you're going to do. Again, it's not something I've done, and I'm not. I keep chicken for eggs. I keep them for pest control and for compost making and for looking after the soil. But the negative sides, I mean, the positives far outweigh the negatives. Wow, we are 15 minutes past 6. We're really getting into it. If anybody does have any more questions or anything you want to ask, then please do get into your share in the chat. Now, last week you sent me the challenge. This was Scott's challenge to make a herb tea bed, and I've made it. So let's have a look at that. I want you to tell me what you would grow in this herb tea bed as well.
Right, guys, this week you sent me the mission to create a herbal tea bed, and when you suggested this, it gave me an idea of what I can do with this Belfast sink. This Belfast sink came from a pub a friend of ours has been demolishing, shall we say, but we managed to salvage this because I think it's going to be great here in the garden. I've got a couple more of these, not quite as big as this one, but it's quite a long one. This one is about 1 metre long, so it's quite a big one, but I think for herbal tea it is going to be great. I've given this a bit of a clean up as best as I could. I couldn't get rid of that, unfortunately, but it'll do for now. So what we need to do next is add in plenty of compost. Now for this is Roxy. We're adding a bit of a mixture of different compost. So I've got this, our normal 50 litres of standard green waste compost, which we're going to throw it in there and get this underway like so. Roxy loves the stuff, as you can see, but we're also going to mix in a bag of coir compost just to add a bit more to it, like so, and then we've just got to give this all a good mix to make sure it is all really well incorporated. Now that's got this bed more or less created. We're just going to level out the soil a bit and make sure it does well. Hopefully there's going to be plenty of nutrients in this to get it through the year, but in future we will have to add more nutrients to it. Now for the plants. Now I spent a bit of time researching all the different herbs that we could use for this particular bed for herbal teas. Wide range of plants that we could use, all of which have different benefits for health and things, and I'm a little bit unsure which ones I would recommend for health reasons, because I'm not a doctor at the end of the day. But I made a few decisions of what I wanted. Then I went to a garden centre to find out some plants, and they didn't have everything that I wanted. But we got what we wanted to make a start. So let's start bringing in the plants that we have. We can always add more in the future. So the first plants we're going to add is this rosemary I got from the garden centre. I love rosemary. It makes a lovely tea. I used to have quite a bit of rosemary growing, but they're all starting to get a little bit woody. So it's time for a bit of refreshing, and this is going to go towards the back because it can get quite tall, and therefore it shouldn't, in theory, shade anything out. So rosemary for the first one. Then what have we got? Sage. Beautiful sage. Again, I've got sage. It's getting a bit woody now, so I think it's time for a bit of refresh and change. But again, I'm going to stick this towards the back again, because again it can get quite big. Now I'd imagine when all these start to grow, they will look even better and better and start to really take shape. The next one I'm going to stick in is thyme, and I've gone for a creeping red thyme, just for a bit of difference. And I've gone for creeping because what I want to do with this is have this down towards the front here, so it can creep over the edge and make it look really quite nice. So that's 3 of the herbs I wanted to get in. Next one I'm going to do is this lemon balm. Now I actually already had this one in this pot and grown well. Lemon balm can be quite invasive, so I'm actually going to plant this in the pot itself. I'm going to keep it towards the front once again, probably around here, and see how we get on with it. And I'm keeping it in the pot just to restrict it a little so it doesn't take over the entire plant, the sink, like so. And I'm going to do the same with my next plant, which is this Moroccan mint. Moroccan mint is the best, so I've read, for teas. I'm personally not a tea drinker, so this is going to be an experiment for me. I've tried Moroccan mint in the past. Again, mint is quite invasive, so I'm growing it in this pot again just to restrict it a little, but I bought it from a garden centre, so it's not exactly ready to go. But what I can do is just take that out that pot and pop it in there like so. Just firm that in and it is good to go. So there we go, that is get this herbal tea bed built. There's more herbs I could of course add. Chamomile for one. I'm not a lover of chamomile, but we could add it as well. But let me know what herbs you would add to this herbal tea bed in the comments down below. Back to the studio.
There we go. Was that mission accomplished? I think it was. It's just a shame there's not many herbal or herbs available at the moment. Give it a couple of weeks, there will be many, many more. Looking forward to trying some of these teas, seeing what we can make out of them. A lot of fun, and best of all, it gave me the chance to use that sink for something that I haven't thought out about for a while. So quickly going back to the comments. So Rob says quail eggs are yummy. Quail eggs were perfect for making Scotch eggs as well. They're the perfect size to wrap around sausage meat, and a really perfect size, I thought. Anna Jones says, what's the general risk of salmonella? Good question, actually. I've never suffered from it myself. What I would say is that salmonella, as I understand it, usually comes from the outside of the eggs. When they lay it, it's like a lubricant that the chicken smothers over it when they're laying the eggs, and that's where the risk of salmonella comes. So what I always do when I pick up the eggs, take them indoors, I then wash my hands before I do anything else. Other than that, I don't think there's any risk of salmonella ever. But I could be wrong. I'm no scientist. All I would say, 8 years, I've never had salmonella poison. I've never had salmonella poisoning in my entire life, to be fair. Idaho says, we used to raise meat birds, but they were bred to be ready as a fry in just 6 to 8 weeks. I didn't feel so attached to them. As they get fatter and meatier, the leg joints became weak and they can barely walk. Yeah. It's not nice, isn't it, when you think of it like that in some ways, but that's the reality of how we feed ourselves. Kate says, yay, Roxy, it was nice to see you in the garden, wasn't it? And she came and joined me and gave me a hand. Idaho says, neither one of my kids live on the land. They live in the city and they're happy there, but I know if they had to, they could raise and butcher. It's a skill we've lost, I think. 100 years ago, we would all do it, but these days, I don't think we could. Paint the sink with PVA glue. Make up a mortar rich in compost and daub it on the outside. Smooth it off. Hey presto, a stone sink. It's a good idea. I've got 2 other of those sinks. Not as big, but I do think. But I've got 2 other ones of them, though, so I might do something with them in the future. Rob says, will the roots not come out the bottom of the holes and spread in the sink? Talking about the mints. There is a risk that could happen, of course. What I will do is just every now and then just take those pots out of the compost and trim up any roots to try and reduce the risk of that happening. Give the roots a prune, if you like. And that should stop any problems with that. I've got a bit of a cold, if you haven't worked it out. So I'm a bit bunged up. Scott says, love Roxy giving a helping pour. I've definitely got to create a herb tea planter at home. I drink lots of herb teas, Morocco mint tea, beautiful, good choices. What herbs would you grow now? What herbs would you add? Let me know. Idaho says, that is a cool sink. I like to find one of those. They are Belfast sinks. I said we had one when we moved into this house that was in the garden that we inherited, and then Amanda's parents gave us one as well. So, and with that one, I'm always on the hunt for them. They're not cheap to buy though; they are very expensive. Adrian says you can still get ex-caged chickens, as it is still okay to farm them caged. They must have a bigger space than before. Okay, there we go. A lot of legal things going on there, but yeah. Scott says mission definitely accomplished and it's inspired him. Fantastic. I get herbs from Urban Herbs and they have some really funky varieties. Barbecue rosemary, strawberry mint, orange mint, and ones like that. I plan to make a huge herb garden. Their shop has just reopened. Yeah, I've seen them. I've seen them at shows and stuff as well. Lot of good choices. The trouble is, it's so easy to get too carried away with what we could do. So I had to restrict it down. I've only got so much space at the end of the day. But yeah, and what they had in garden centres. I had to go and see what I like the idea of barbecue rosemary though. That sounds like an interesting one. Digwa says Meg Rabi mint is best for mint tea. Meg Rabi, not heard of it, but yeah. That sounds good. Rob says, ask Edwina Curry. She killed the egg industry years ago. What did she do? I have a vague recollection, but what did she do? Let me know. Nicholas says, just what marquee for the new chicken run? 12 by 6 meters. Just need to erect and wire. Nicholas says, chamomile tea grown from seed, Richard. Grown from seed, I think that's meant to be. Yeah, I mean, chamomile tea was one that I added to my list, but I've grown it before. And to be honest, I never really liked chamomile tea. I just couldn't get into the flavors. So it was one that everyone raves about, but I just couldn't get into it. Nicholas says chocolate mint and pineapple mint, cola mint, etc. All the different flavors of mint. Yeah, but the trouble with so many different types of mint, isn't it? It's very easy to end up with so many, but we get all that. At this point, I'd just like to remind you to please give us a like, please give us a thumbs up, please do give us a follow, and please do give us a subscribe. Especially if you liked Roxy in that video, she could do with a bit of a confidence boost, shall we say, just so she knows she is liked. Rob says she said all eggs had salmonella. Oh, is that what she did? I mean, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. There's probably all eggs probably do have salmonella. I don't know, but there's not many of the problems that I think it can cause. It's like so many things that we used to get scared of. Raw chicken, of course, which we can't eat, but that led to people not eating most raw foods because they were afraid it would have the same effect. Yeah, a little bit of knowledge sometimes doesn't help. Digwell says a big list of herbal tea seeds on my video out at 5 p.m. today. I just seen that you had posted a picture in our Facebook group as well of you sowing them. So there are so many that we could choose from. Trouble is, it's tying it down to what a few is, isn't it? Anna Jones says Edwina said the entire UK industry had egg industry had salmonella. Yeah. Scott says I would add lavender, nice when used in small amounts and very nice with dried strawberry and mint in a herb tea. Lavender, yeah, I couldn't find any lavender in the garden centre, but I've got a huge lavender plant out the front there as well. Tigra says Edwina. That's a good one. Eguina. That's a good one. I like that. I'm quite fond of minty mint, garden mint. Yeah, there's so many different flavors mint, isn't there, these days? That you can end up with so many. Kate says Corsican mint is also a great one. It forms a lawn-like carpet that smells incredible and is used to make creme de menthe. I did see that as well. Not for sale, but I did see that when I was doing my research. It's another great one to do. Scott says also dried rhubarb in herb teas mixes works well. As I said, Scott, you may have to start coming up with some herbal tea recipes in the future. That might be something we can discuss in the future. Idaho says, well, that would definitely hurt the egg industry. It really does, doesn't it? Some people who think they know something and don't get involved. Digwell says, you planted Meghrabi mint, also called Moroccan mint. There we go. It's just a different name. I do like Moroccan mint. I've grown it before, and I did try. I mean, I did make a few mint teas out of it, and it was absolutely lovely. I'm just going to make a note of that Corsican mint and lavender as other options to grow. But does anybody else, do you grow herbal teas? Do you make your own herbal teas? I found when I was doing research, when I was doing a lot of research into it, most of the herbal teas they were listing were sort of giving us reasons to, or giving us for medicinal reasons, which isn't really why I wanted to grow the herbs. I wanted them to be because we like the flavour of them, not because of their medicinal purposes. I wanted to grow herbal teas for their flavour, something that we could drink, something refreshing, something nice. But most of them, they were listed for the medicinal benefits, which I thought, I'm sure there are medicinal benefits to all herbs, but I think some of them are, or when you start getting into that, you touch on some difficult ground, because if you don't really know what you're talking about, are you right to share with it? Added to that, as I have, as I've said time before, I suffer from ADD. So a lot of these things that people say, they help with your concentration or your sleep, don't work on me. They don't work on me because of my ADD. So that's again, I have stayed away from the medicinal side of things, apart from feverfew, because I know that works, because that helps with my headaches. But apart from that, I've not done anything with them. Rob says it took years before people would eat eggs again from Edwina. It's annoying, isn't it? He says that was years ago now. Digwell says the fancy mints cost a lot, £2 for 25 seeds. And you know how small mint seeds are, tiny. Definitely something. I mean, I've not grown mint from seed before, I don't think, because I don't see the point in it. Thyme seeds are pretty small as well, but they're easy to do from seeds. But mint, because it's so invasive, I always think you're much better off taking a root cutting and potting that up to grow mint from. What have we got? Stuart Jackson says, has anyone got any recipes for herbal tea? Thank you. That's a good thing to add. Anybody got recipes for herbal tea? Find that out. Excuse me. Scott says, I use herb teas as a sleep aid. Things like passion flower work well, lavender, etc. Share your recipes, Scott. It's a good idea. Kate says rose hips are also good to add to tea. Yeah, rose hips also make a good jam full of vitamin C and Rosa rugosa. The spikes on those plants are thicker and worse than brambles. So if you want a security plant, rose hips are the way to go as well. I haven't grown any rose hips, but they are absolutely delicious. Digwell says, I find pure single plant teas are the best. Orange balm, for example. Excellent. I mean, it's very easy to get carried away with these herbs. There's so many different herbs, isn't there, that we can use. I mean, as I said, I'm trying to refresh all my herbs up. And my herb garden, funny enough, was in front of my chicken run. Because I thought that was a good place and had somewhere for the chickens and a bit of intrigue for the chickens. But I'm looking now to move the chicken run just only about 30 centimetres over, which is going to get rid of that herb garden, which is why I'm moving all my herbs back to where they were underneath our kitchen window in those large pots. But restricted on space and size does create issues. And I think that's why they're going to be grown in pots. But I do want to grow quite a few more herbs. Kate says rosemary tea on its own is lovely. Yeah, I don't think I've ever drunk rosemary tea. I'll be honest with you. I love rosemary. Absolutely love rosemary, especially in a nice lamb or leg of lamb studded into that. It is beautiful. So I can see how it would work really nice in a tea, and see how we get on with it. But yeah, rosemary tea sounds absolutely delicious. I will have to give that a try. But as Stuart said, we could do with some recipes. What do you think on that? Let's have a look at your photos. Oh, hang on. You want me up there as well, don't you? Like that. There we go. Let's have a look at your photos while we think on some of these recipes. So Bethan, she shared these photos of her chilies growing under grow lights. Looking fantastic. I've got to say, really, really big, long plants. So they are looking amazing. Kate has her hydroponic chilies, which has cheered her up because she's had a bit of an illness week. I think we all have, haven't we? But these are growing great, aren't they? Hydroponics seems really popular at the moment. Certainly something I should look more into. Beddoes has posted what we are all feeling with this rain. It's this cartoon sketch where it says, is it just me or have we had a lot of rain lately? And as the bloke's looking out the window, he can see a fish in the water. It definitely feels like that, doesn't it? It definitely feels like that. And talking of Beddoes, he's been talking about his tomatoes indoors that are growing great. I've got to say, they are of a nice big size. You're going to struggle to control those, but they are looking great, Ian, I have to say. Stuart's got his Supporters Club pack, a collection of seeds sent out for this month, as well as the newsletter, etc., etc. If you're not aware, I run a Supporters Club to help support the podcast, this live show, etc., etc. And in return, for £5 a month, you get a collection of seeds sent to your door each month. Steve is impressed with his first attempt at forced rhubarb. I love forced rhubarb. I haven't forced any this year, but forced rhubarb. Really nice sweet flavour. Does take it out of the rhubarb plant itself a bit, but really nice flavour. Added to that, he was talking last week about a squash curry, and he was going to post a photo of it. This is what he posted. Looks absolutely delicious, I have to say. Tom has shared his first photo with us in the group, and this is his seed setup. Lots of seeds growing well there in his silver foil backed card, reflecting all the light everywhere, and the cat has also perched in to help as well. Looks fantastic though, doesn't it? Absolutely fantastic. Amanda's got a rather novel way of washing her pots. She filled up the bath, and stuck them in there, and gave them a good wash while her husband was out on a walk. I hope he didn't get told off too much when he came back. This is her plot shot as well for March. Looks fantastic. Good to see stuff is going on. Roll on when the weather really starts going, doesn't it? When we really do get a chance to garden. So please do keep sharing your photos. You can post them in our Facebook group, send to me via social media, or email me, richard@theveggroundpodcast.co.uk. richard@theveggroundpodcast.co.uk. Let's have a quick look. So Digwell says, but you have to have a parent plant to take cuttings. I just sown lime, chocolate, lemon, and pineapple mints, etc., etc. Yes, you are right. You do need parent plants to take those root cuttings. Do you find, because I've grown some of the flavored mints in the past, but after a few years they do tend to lose that flavor, I found. So you have to keep refreshing them from time to time, I think. I don't know if that's just me though, but let me know what you think. Idaho says, I really like chocolate mint. It's amazing how they've made that one plant so many different flavors. Andrew says, my bedtime drink is often fresh ginger. Excuse me, sorry. Fresh ginger, a dash of lemon, a spoon of honey, and a splash of homemade plum brandy. I'm going to need some honey after this, I think. Yeah, delicious, delicious. There we go. That's a tea recipe right there. So do I the chocolate bar, talking about chocolate mint. Great cartoon for says Idaho to Ian. Indeed, it is. She also says the squash curry looks yummy. Didn't it just? Kate says, was that cat mint? Yeah, cat mint or catnip, isn't it? Scott says, I will share some recipes. I will be making some tea mixes when I have fruit to dry, as I like to add them to herbal mixes for flavour. Maybe future podcast recipes. Absolutely. As something else to think about and something we could share a bit more of. Great plot shot. Amanda says Idaho, and Turbo Stream says nice pics, everyone. Digwell says great pics, and Turbo Stream says I like ginger and lemon tea with a spot of honey. And Scott says fab pics, squash curry looks lovely. Anna Jones says ginger, honey, and whiskey for me. Another tea recipe. I'm definitely going to need some honey in something tonight with my throat. I thought I got away with it, but it started to come back. Right, I've also sown some seeds this week. It was cabbage that I decided to sow. By the way, I need a mission for next week. So you guys get choosing or thinking of a mission for next week while we have a look at me sowing some cabbage seeds. Right, guys, this week we are sowing cabbage seed. And cabbages are great all year round crop that is well worth sowing. What I recommend when it comes to things like cabbages, cauliflowers, anything in the brassicas family, it's worth sowing a few seeds every few weeks. So we'll sow some cabbages now. These will give us some summer cabbages, but then we can sow some in about 3 weeks time. That will give us a few cabbages a bit later on, and so on, so that we get all year round harvests, particularly during the summer period, because brassicas are more of a cool loving crop. It is quite pertinent to just monitor your plants and make sure that we can only sow enough that we can eat in one go. So come down here, let me show you what we're doing.
Now, as I said, we're only going to sow a few seeds, so I've filled up one of these trays with my plug plant compost, seed compost, that is, coir based, and this will give us 4, 8, 12, 16, 20 plants, which is probably more than what we actually need. Assuming they all germinate, 20 cabbages is probably more than enough. But, you know, we can always see how we get on. We can always donate more food to other people. These are the seeds. They are fairly small and fiddly, so we've got to be very, very careful with these in order to try and make sure that, one, we don't get sow them too deep, but two, actually able to handle them. Well, we could just do the broadcast sowing where you scatter the seeds across a pot and then prick them out at a later date. That's something I'm personally trying to do less and less of, just because I find growing these in plug plants on such mass scale is much easier for me. All I'm doing, I'm digging a hole 1 centimetre deep, and then we're going to take a single seed and just pop it into each little hole, which isn't easy to do, I grant you that, but it is well worth it. These are small seeds, they are quite fiddly, but we should get quite well. Now, this is a variety called Greyhound, which is a good type of cabbage for summer sowing. It does form like a pointy head, but again, when it comes to cabbages, there's so many different varieties and so many different textures and shapes of cabbage, much like lettuce, that you do need to make a good choice of what you want. You could get a cos cabbage and things like that. So, not cos, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. So there we go. That has got 20 of these seeds sown. We're going to pop those into there for now, and we're just going to cover these seeds back over like so. And then what we're going to do is place this tray in the greenhouse. Now, cabbages don't need a huge amount of heat. They can tolerate cold weather. And the greenhouse might actually still get a little bit too hot. So we've got to keep a close eye on it and just see how we get on. But I would expect germination to take a couple of weeks. We will leave them to grow in these particular pots where we would expect them to. They last quite a long time in that, if I'm honest with you. And then once they are big enough, we can take those straight out into the garden and plant them in the garden. Of course, the bed needs to be prepared in advance. Hoed, cleared of any weeds, raked, added lime because it is a brassica. Brassicas do need a different pH than most other crops. So plenty of lime added to the soil is the best preparation tip I can give you. Don't bother adding manure because that will counteract the effects of the lime. And then we just leave them to grow, keep them weed free, keep them moist. Keep an eye on them. Pigeons can be a bit of a pest for these. They do like to munch on these. I highly recommend Grazer's pigeon and deterrent spray for that. And then when they are large enough, when they've formed the heads, you then harvest them. So as easy as that, brassicas or cabbages. Let us know your tips for growing cabbages down below in the comments. Back to the studio.
Indeed, back to the studio. Yeah, cabbage is really easy to grow. If anybody's got any tips that I didn't mention, let us know that. Rob says, Stella for me. I don't drink, so no good for me. Digger says, cheers, Scott, talking about the curry. Ginger makes me sneeze too. I've got ginger growing downstairs, so we got quite a bit of ginger actually. It's a good plant to grow. Very easy once you've mastered how to get it started. Turbo Stream says, I sowed some cabbage and beetroot this week too. Fantastic, fantastic. I must do more beetroot soon, thinking about it. Margaret says, how about making a natural medicine bed as your challenge? It's up to you guys, of course. But the trouble is there's not many herbs in a garden centre or herbs that I've got ready to go at the moment. So that might be something we do later in April or something, if you can hold on that long. That is. I'm also a bit worried about. You don't know much about the medicine side of it. I'm not a doctor, so I'm always careful with that. Digwell says, I like cold apple tea sometimes called scrumpy cider. I've got it. That is one drink I do drink, cider. Stuart says, next week challenge, greenhouse maintenance, i.e. how to clean it all before we start sowing in earnest. That's a good idea, actually, something I do need to do. What do you guys think on that? Greenhouse maintenance, is that something you would do for my challenge? It's one of your 5 a day, talking about cider. Amanda says, as I said, the bath filled up with pots she was cleaning. Fortunately, my husband is quite chilled after the pot bath. I put up a small flimsy in the bedroom for grow lights for the next month or so. I gave it a good wash first, says Amanda. Fantastic, fantastic. Rob says, love greyhound cabbage. Yeah, don't we all? Don't we all? Digwell's given us a couple of thumbs up. Please do give us a thumbs up. Let's see what's that. Kate says, how about the fermented wheat extract? Makes a good cold tea. Absolutely. Yeah. Fermented wheat extract. Good cold tea. It's all about teas, isn't it? All about the teas. Digwell says, Richard, the third and eighth holes you did were only 0.8 centimeters deep. Back up, buddy. Sorry. I'm sorry. You know how it is when you're doing a video and trying to sow seeds, things do tend to slip sometimes. Should we put it like that? Put it politely, shall we say? But yeah, could have done better. Slap on my wrist for that. I know exactly where you're going with that as well. Andrew says, get in touch with our good friend Kim Murden if you want information about medicinal quality of certain plants. Yes, I've been meaning to do a podcast with her actually about it. It's something I don't get involved in because I'm not a doctor, but it's definitely something we could do in the future, actually. I'll have to get in touch and see what we can do about that. That would be interesting. I need to sow lettuce in a vein, hope they might grow, but I don't hold much hope. I think they just get too hot where you are. It's very in your porch. I think they just get too hot. That's my thoughts on it. Anyway, for next week's sow along, we're going to be doing a summer squash, the seed of the month, which we've done in with these guys in Premier Seeds. You can't see it on that. It's a summer squash called Zephyr F1. I've spoke about this on the podcast. I've got a few things coming out about that over the next few weeks as well. But we're going to sow those seeds next week to get those off to a good start too. A bit like a courgette, but don't worry about that. What have we got? Digwell says, don't worry about the backlash from herbal tea usage. It's up to the end user. We all have different bodies. Only a few of us are perfect. You are right. It's more about the claims that I worry about because you know what it's like. How can you back up your claims and stuff like that? The only way I get around that by saying reportedly or reported and things like that. But as I said, a lot of like the lavender teas people say calm you don't work on me. ADD brain, so it doesn't work on everyone. My personal opinion on that. Anyway, Rob says, never tasted squash or pumpkin. Oh, you're missing out. You are missing out. I mean, these summer squash, the Zephyr F1, they are basically similar to courgette, but much more fruitier flavour, I would describe them. But well worth growing. As I said, Premier Seeds are. I've got but I should say this actually. If anybody is buying seeds from Premier Seeds Direct, if you've known them, you know how cheap their seeds are anyway. But we also have a discount code VEGPOD10, all in one word. That's VEGPOD 10, all one word. And you get another 10% off. A really, really great discount there, I have to say, on top of what is already cheap prices from them. So for next week, for the mission, do you want me to do the greenhouse? Are you okay with that? Or do you want me to do the medicinal herb bed? I don't. I think the medicinal herb bed might be April, in all honesty, because there's not many herbs actually in the garden centre that I can buy or sow. Greenhouse care. a subject for next week as well. I was thinking something I could discuss is visiting gardens. I visited, as I said, I visited Hyde Hall yesterday in Essex. First time I've ever been there. Got a bit, probably a little bit too early to go and visit, but it was definitely worth a trip out nonetheless. But I want to know, would that be something you want to talk about next week? Some of the gardens you visit or want to visit this year. I know we've discussed this in the past. I think it's something I always like to discuss. I do like going out and visiting gardens, and there's more and more that I found available for us. Zephyr is a fantastic squash, great looking too. Green one half, yellow the other. Absolutely, and you get white stripes as well sometimes. Really, really good. A good summer squash, good looking and full of flavour. Time Extreme says, pray for sunny and dry weather for the challenge joke. Yeah, we can pray and pray and pray for that, can't we? Scott says, greenhouse sounds good. Mine seeds are going over, so happy for tips and tricks. Yeah, not a problem. We can do the greenhouse next week as a challenge. I think my greenhouse does need a bit of TLC, to be fair, so that's definitely something we could do. It's something on my list of things to do as well. Anna Jones says visiting gardens, definitely there. Definitely there. I love visiting gardens, so it's definitely something we can do. Digwa says 10% off if you spend over £10 less postage. It should be 10% off regardless, plus postage, like. That's what they said to me anyway, but I'll double check that for you. VegPod 10, as I said. Digwell says greenhouse for me. Excellent. Yep, we can do the greenhouse next week for the challenge. That's on the list. And visiting gardens is going to be the subject. Oh, love it. I have to go through some of my photos and see what we've got there to really discuss them, because I've been to quite a few over the last, as I said, Hyde Hall, one garden in Brighton. We got Bewley, of course, Audley End House. We've got another garden, High Down Gardens, and that's just a few I can think of off the top of my head. There's so many more out there to think about. Greenhouse for me is I don't have one. It's an easy week. Might persuade you to get one, though. We might be able to persuade you to get a greenhouse or something similar. I got to admit, though, I mean, I'll discuss this next week. You know those cheap greenhouses that are made like tents, made out of the poles that you bolt together, you pop the plastic cover over you, and then you tie them into place with guy ropes. I personally think they are a waste of money. If anybody's got one, I apologise. I've had a few in the past. I think they're a waste of money. Slightest bit of wind and they seem to blow it over. I'd sooner spend a bit more money and get a proper framed greenhouse. My personal opinion. You're welcome to disagree with me on that next week as well. Right, guys, we are coming to the end of this week's show. It's been really good chatting to you. Been really good conversation once again. I hope you've enjoyed it. Apologies for my voice being a bit off and my throat, etc., etc. But it happens, doesn't it, from time to time. We will be back again next Sunday at 6 for another chat where we're going to be talking about greenhouses. We're going to be sowing the summer squash Zephyr F1, and we are going to be talking about the garden visits. Going to be a good conversation. So if you've got any photos or any videos or anything like that you want to send in to me, Richard at veggroundpodcast.co.uk. Can't think of anything else. But happy to see any photos, any videos as well, anything like that. It will go down great. And start thinking about all the gardens that you would like to visit. Right, I haven't set myself up, but as I wind this up and get out of here, been great chatting. I'll see you again next time.